Good morning. The reading is from Luke chapter 1, verses 46 to 55. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to his descendants forever."
Well, last Sunday was our children's Christmas pageant. There they are, getting their backstage. That's the 9:30 crew getting ready backstage. Did a great job, didn't they? Hey? But as I was watching that and thinking ahead to this week, I couldn't help but notice that, as in all Christmas pageants, Mary didn't have very much to say. If I were a child actor looking for a prominent role in a pageant, I would ask to be an angel, or maybe even a shepherd. Mary gets a lot of stage time, but not a lot of lines, not a lot of dialogue. In last week's performance, Mary got to say, "I will happily carry out God's will." The innkeeper had twice as many lines to learn as Mary did. And even Caesar Augustus, admirably played by a last-minute fill-in, had more lines than Mary did. We heard about Mary, but not very much from Mary. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a criticism of our pageant. If I were writing or directing a children's Christmas pageant, I wouldn't give Mary a big speech either. Because what Mary has to say, and we heard it in today's reading, is a long speech about socioeconomic upheaval. It's not the kind of thing that really fits easily into a children's Christmas pageant. And so, unlike every pageant ever performed, in Luke's nativity story, Mary has a lot to say. And it's especially notable because only a handful of women in the Bible get to have a long speech. Actually, not even a handful. Really, it's just a few. Miriam, the sister of Moses, has a speech at the end of the Exodus, or after the Exodus. And Hannah, whose prayer is for a son is answered by God, gives a speech. And then Mary also has this long speech that she gives. And that's it. Other important women of the Bible, like Rachel or Deborah or Ruth or Mary Magdalene, they have dialogue, yes, but they don't get to make a big speech. And in fact, these three speeches by these three women are not even called speeches in the Bible, they're songs. In the Bible, if you're a woman and you want to get your point across at any length, you have to know how to sing. So for Luke to include the Magnificat, he must think it's pretty important, and maybe it's worth us having a look at too. And what jumps out for me immediately are the verbs in the Magnificat. God has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away. These are future events that Mary is talking about, but she's talking about them as if they've already happened. Now, technically, she uses a verb tense that doesn't exist in English. And this verb tense, which allows Mary to talk about the future in the past and in the present somehow, It has a technical name, but I'm going to call this verb tense the Christmas present. And I think we already understand about the Christmas present as a verb tense. It's why we have Christmas traditions. Every Christmas tradition brings to life all the Christmases from before when we had those same traditions. And they make alive the Christmases to come because we know we will repeat those traditions on those days. Christmas traditions. Now, we all know what a traditional Christmas dinner looks like, turkey and all the trimmings. But I know that many families have individual traditions within that dinner, so like who's going to mash the potatoes, or who's going to make the gravy, the one who can do it without leaving any lumps. Who's going to carve the turkey? All those things are individual traditions. Families often have a traditional Christmas breakfast. In my family, every year, Debbie bakes a delicious Christmas bread called a stollen. And every year I say, "Oh, this is so good it must be stolen." And every year she pretends to be offended, and every year I pretend not to understand why. It's a tradition. When I was growing up, my mother worked nights. And she didn't get home until about 7:30 in the morning. So I was allowed to open my Christmas stocking before she got home. Not the presents, just my stocking. And in our family, that tradition continued. When Debbie and I had children, we arranged with Santa for the stockings to be left in their bedrooms. And that way the kids could wake up in the morning. And it wasn't because there wasn't anybody home. It was because we had a house full of relatives. And we didn't want the kids to disturb their Aunt Kathy, who always slept on the living room couch. But the tradition continued. As a child, I never peeked at my Christmas presents. I knew exactly where they were, but I never looked, first of all, because it's wrong, but mostly because I enjoyed the anticipation. I enjoyed the surprise on Christmas morning. But I know perfectly nice people, or perhaps I should say otherwise perfectly nice people, who always peeked at their Christmas presents. And they tell me that the pleasure they got on Christmas morning was in pretending to be surprised. Christmas traditions. So Mary uses this Christmas present verb tense, which allows her to speak of God's promises as now and also as not yet. The Christmas present was at work in the baptism we saw this morning. The parents made promises, and so did we as a congregation. Promises that together we will help Lila live into the new world that Mary describes. Baptism is now, and it's not yet. Because we anticipate, as Darren was saying, that in 13 or 14 years, Lila will stand before us again and reaffirm for herself the vows that were made on her behalf today. Now, the verbs that Mary speaks in the Christmas present are all about transformation. Listen to them again. God has brought down the powerful and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry, and I love this, has filled the hungry, not just filled them, but filled them with good things. You don't get that at social services. And sent the rich away empty. I want you to think about that program of change, a transformation for the underprivileged and the overprivileged. Compare that, for example, to Donald Trump's program for change, or any of the Republican presidential candidates. Or compare it even to the promises for change, the programs for change we heard about in our election just a couple of months ago. Yes, there was a little bit of talk about making the super rich pay their fair share, and a lot of talk about taking care of the middle class. But I heard very little about lifting up the lowly, and I don't remember hearing anything about filling the poor with good things. So imagine, if you will, a Christmas pageant for grown-ups. A Christmas pageant as Luke imagined it, with Mary getting the most lines. Imagine, and I know that in the Bible, in the biblical story, that Mary sings her song inside Elizabeth's house, but I always imagine it happening on the outside, out in a field, a big green field somewhere. I imagine Mary as Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. Like that. Mary is singing about new life because she has new life within her. And she knows that this new life will change the world in ways that it will never be the same again. And like Julie Andrews, she turns as she sings in my imagination because she's speaking about revolution. Her song is called the Magnificat because that is the first word in the Latin translation. It means magnify. My soul magnifies the Lord, she sings. Now, we've all looked through a magnifying glass, I'm sure. It makes things larger as Mary's belly is growing larger. And maybe her ankles, too. My soul magnifies the Lord. It brings things into focus more clearly. It makes things a little more sharp, a little more clear. Mary can now see a clear vision of God's desire for our hurting world. The Magnificat is the charter document of God's revolutionary song. The Magnificat is the Magna Carta of God's monarchy here on earth, sung in the Christmas present. It is, and it is not yet. The Magnificat is a comfort, and it is a challenge. The Magnificat is a call to give thanks and a call to take action. This Christmas, let us celebrate the birth of the Christ child, but let us also remember that young woman's revolutionary song, the one who challenges us to magnify God, to make God bigger in our lives, in our families, in our city, in our province, in our nation, in all the world. Thanks be to God. Amen. 'Twas the night before Christmas in the church of St. Martin. The people were gathered. The service was starting. Yeah. Then out in the lounge there arose such a clatter, I stepped down from the pulpit and called, "What's the matter?" And what to my wondering eyes should appear but Jesus himself with 8 tiny reindeer. His beard, it was whitened, his nose was made red, his robe had a pillow. Ho, 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 the Lord said. "What's this all about?" I exclaimed to the Christ. "You're dressed up with Santa, but you don't look so nice." "Well," said the Lord with a shake of his head, "if you can't beat him, join him," the Prince of Peace said. I tried preaching love. I did powerful deeds, but it seemed Christmas season is now all about greed. So I told my friend, Santa, I said, "Yo, take a break. Let me guide your sleigh tonight, all for the gospel's sake. With gifts of hope and peace and joy and love for every girl and boy, I want to make my people forget that Christmas is only the presents they get. My birthday is all about what we can give, and that really is the best way to live. So I'm wearing this costume and driving this sleigh, a disguise, so that people maybe will hear what I say. And you tell them too," he said, pointing at me. "Tell them they're precious. Tell them they're free. Tell them I love them and I've given my life to free them from trouble, to free them from strife. The best gifts being given, not earned." He said, then he blessed me and to his sleigh turned, and I heard him exclaim as he rose out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and God's peace on this night."